So I was gonna work on this outside, but we're having one of the windiest days in like a decade right now. I had this car out of storage for less than 2 days, and somebody decided they wanted to let themselves in, or try to, with a knife. So I've got a really nice big old tear where somebody took a razor blade to my top. Looks like they tried here too, but it didn't quite get through. Talked to a couple of upholstery places and nobody wanted to touch it. So I bought just like a generic 12-inch like patch thing, some canvas glue, and then a really beefy set of needles and some stay fast canvas threads. So I'm actually going to try to repair, and by that I just mean make it not get worse, because what do you do? I mean, a new soft top for this thing is probably parts and labor $1,500. It's just not worth my time. So that's my plan. I'm gonna grab the stuff out of the passenger seat right now. We'll look at what I have and start walking through it, I guess. But people suck. This happened right in front of my house, and again, it was out of storage for 2 days. Unbelievable. I have to imagine it's just because I leave a Valentine 1 in here, but the economy needs to pick back up. People go get vaccinated, go back to work, because bored people annoy the piss out of me. So these are upholstery needles, thick boys, but I do have one little guy here with a curve in it, which I think is going to be perfect. With the soft top in a partially up position, there's actually a good amount of flex in the fabric, but it's a lined top, so I really can't get at the backside. Step one is going to be putting the patch in underneath it, I think. Yeah, so this fabric you see right here is not the actual fabric. So that's something I have to make a decision on. The upholstery places said it's unwise to perforate the what do you call this? Canvas, sorry, more than you have to, just for leakage reasons. But this is a lined top, and I'm not sure if I trust just the patch. So this stuff is really, really beefy, double set tape. I'll leave links to all this down in the description too if you have the same issue. This stuff was apparently good for sealing, and then I had an actual patch somewhere. Maybe that was this. Might have been this. But either way, this needs to go in first because I have access to the inside of the top mech right now, and I won't, even if I'm sewing through that later. Okay, so I tried first putting in this patch stuff with the tape removed going in and shoving in the corner with the flat blade, and it's too sticky. So what I ended up doing is using the other part of it with the sticky tape facing down, but with the paper not removed, right underneath the tear, and then I used that seam grip plus sill, and I just brushed it around with the included brush right around it. Now I'm going to take the upholstery needle and I'm going to start sewing it shut through the patch. All right, so I've got the main area done up. I dabbed the start and end knots of the thread with some super glue, and I'm going to run all the way back down again until I run out of thread, just to make sure I've got the best possible chance. This poor car, man. It's got like 15,000 miles on it, and it's already getting this done to it. Got 80% of the way through and I broke the needle. I have one more curved needle. I'm going to try to finish up with that, but it's massive. Luckily, I got all the way down to the actual perforation, but I was going to go a little bit past on this area where clearly they knifed it but didn't get in, or get through anyway. Oops. Definitely buy a couple of them, and that one's called a mattress needle apparently, so that one's a winner. That's pretty good, and I'm actually pretty happy with how that feels. So good enough confidence-wise with this repair once it's done. Well, that'll do it. 2 full runs. Maybe not the prettiest thing in the world, but again, when you're looking at a car from a distance, I mean, might not even notice it walking by. I think I drove it at least once before I realized that had even been sliced. So since I knew it was there, I had to fix it. And again, water ingress, not something I was definitely looking forward to dealing with, but when no upholstery company will touch it, at least this will keep the tear from presumably getting worse and should keep the water out. So I'm going to leave it at that. If the other one ever starts to open up, I will do the same thing for that, but sewed all the way to the front here with the patch, and then the patch goes right about to here, and then I did about another inch after where it was actually cut. So people suck, but at least that's done. I can get back to working on other stuff. Hopefully somebody's coming to buy the unicorn in a couple of minutes. I have all the power steering stuff ready for the IS. And I even got a free ANSA Sport exhaust locally. I found this in a local E30 group, so I'm looking forward to putting that on there. It's actually off of a JDM 320i, so should fit just fine, but that's kind of where I'm at. No, not the IS today. It's actually the E70. This thing belongs to a good friend of mine, which is why I'm working on it, because as you guys know, I do not work on automatics or all-wheel drive. However, at least it's a diesel. The M57 is pretty cool. This was a recent acquisition for them, I think from Texas, and pretty well looked after, fairly high miles, but it's had a lot of deferred maintenance. So did brake work on it, and then did a once-over, figured out it needed thrust arms, it needed a right side front end link without adaptive, and all of the fluids really, except for engine oil. So today I'm going to be doing the ZF6HP26 transmission fluid change with filter, and all the accoutrement. In addition to that, I'll be doing front lower control arms, also known as thrust arms. And I will also be doing front diff, rear diff, transfer case fluids, and I will be doing both front sway bar end links as well. Moving a little slow today, but I'm going to force myself to start working on it because that is the best way to get it done, and it also means I can work on this sooner. That's my highest priority right now, so let's get to it. Well, it looks like we'll be, I hope I don't have to pull the pork chop out to get the bolt for the thrust arms, but they look pretty simple to do. Sometimes they're really blocked in, but the E70 looks like it avoided that just by being a bigger vehicle. This end link, like I said, is completely perished, but I bought a pair, so I'll be doing both. In addition to that, I'll be changing out this large oil pan on the trans, as well as the fluid inside, and we will not be heating this lifetime bullshit, but we will be filling at 100 degrees Fahrenheit, which takes some time to get up to. We'll use a thermal camera for that once we get to that point. Transfer case, luckily an E-chassis vehicle, so it still has a drain plug, which is awesome. The front diff, it looks like I'll have to pull off the main belly pan. Actually, this might be an access port for it, so I'll try getting that off, and we'll take a look. Rear diff. I see a fill. Do not see a drain, so I'll have to suck the fluid out of this one, which sucks. But not the end of the world. I'm used to that with the F-chassis cars, so not sure what BMW is thinking, but we'll get it done. All right, so now that we're mostly bulk drained, I'm gonna throw the plastic drain plug back in. It is important to remove the fill plug as well. That's an 8mm, plastic one's a 10. Now that we're drained out, like I said, I'll throw that back in. Just be conscious of any obstruction that you might have. Like this particular sensor here might get in the way, but it doesn't look like it will. Again, that's one huge upside to working on an X5 versus like a 3 Series or something like that. There's a lot more wiggle room as the vehicle's a lot bigger. So that's the main plan. I'm gonna take all these T40s off now, which holds all of the trans oil pan stuff together, and let's pull that down. So the biggest pain so far has been getting these rear bolts without dropping the rear member. What I ended up doing for that is taking my Torx T40 socket, popping the actual bit out, cutting about 1/4 inch off the back, and then using a 1/4 inch wrench to loosen them, crack the tension loose. And then I was able to use a combination of a flat blade screwdriver and my fingers just to back them out. This one, unfortunately, doesn't quite clear, so I'll have to make sure I reinstall the pan with that bolt sort of captured in there ahead of time, but everything else looks like it should come out really easy. All right, so I just have bolts in the four corners, loosening them down just a bit. This pan will still have some residual fluid in it, so just make sure you've got it fully unobstructed. And take special care for this little captured bolt. You'll have to slide down and then forward. But I'm gonna take the last out, and we'll get this old pan out, and we'll take a look. Well, made a colossal mess either way. Wouldn't be working on a car without it. The fluid doesn't look super good, so definitely a good thing to get it done. Normally I wouldn't even touch an auto, and I wouldn't touch one with this many miles on it without a service, just because there's always risk of it pretty much grenading. But again, grain of salt when you're working on friends' cars, I guess, so give it a go. Next up, I'm not doing any of the sleeves or anything like that because this transmission shifts perfectly, and I am 100% of the idea, if it's not broken, to not fix it. So got the new pan right over there with the new bolts. We'll get it set up and placed onto the transmission. All right, everything's in. I'd have to transfer that little metal clip from the old pan just to hold the pyrometer. But I got everything back in. Just capturing that one bolt, installing it, helped a lot. I was able to get the rear four in. I'm confident that my torque is close enough on those. The rest of them I did use an actual torque wrench. 7.5 foot-pounds or 10 Newton meters. Next up, I'm going to be opening one of my bleeders, and I actually use a motive power bleeder used for brakes, modified to work with trans fluid, and I'll be adding roughly 4.5 liters until it starts dribbling out to the fill plug. Then I'll be hand threading that back in, starting the engine, getting the thermal camera, and we'll run this up to about 100 degrees Fahrenheit pan temperature. And then we will go up top and shift from reverse to neutral to drive, back and forth a couple of times just to get the solenoids going, and then come back down while it's running, open the fill plug, and then hopefully we see a small steady stream of fluid coming out at that point. If not, I will add more fluid until we observe the proper reaction. I don't actually know how much fluid came out. It doesn't seem like all that much, so I think it's supposed to take somewhere around 7 liters total. We'll see. So I found some debris in the bottom of one of the power bleeders, so I'm heating up the ultrasonic tank to clean it. While I do that, I am gravity siphoning the oil out of the rear diff. It's definitely full, but this should make pretty quick work of it. Since there's no drain plug, it's just a bent over piece of, I think this is 3/16 copper nickel brake line, and it's just sculpted to get to the base of the diff. It won't get every last drop, but it gets the vast majority. And it looks like this needed fluid too. That's pretty dark. So while we wait for the rear diff to drain, another really tight clearance. But this 14 mil here in the transfer case, if you just pound the stud out of your Harbor Freight E14, you'll get that to free right up. And then the fill plug, sorry, on the other side, you can reach right on in there and just use a wrench on it from this side too. So transfer case should be pretty easy. Front diff, there is indeed an access panel. Again, we use the 14 mil here, and then remove this panel, and there's your fill plug right there. And here we go, rear diff. Oh, I hear a boomer. All right, front diff's all filled. Transfer case time. That fluid is real bad. Getting closer. Once this is all full, you can drop it back down, and we'll fire up the engine, get that thing up to operating temperature, and fill it, and then we'll move on to hard parts after that. Well, I think that's all she wrote for fluids. Put this back up, do the end links real quick, and then looks like I will have to pull the wheels off, unfortunately, to do the thrust arms, but not the end of the world, I suppose. all of the gears engage. It doesn't clunk anymore, so I'll call it good. But man, I continually remind myself why I don't work on automatic all-wheel drive vehicles. This just sucks. Alright, so I have the new breather hose finally installed. Found a kit that rain sells that actually comes with new clamps too. Just curious to see if that is the only vacuum leak we really had. Oh, I must have the power disconnected. Shoot. Throttle cable's not hooked up. I gotta figure that out. Works. Well, it runs. That's good. Still definitely have some leaks. Obviously, there's no clamps on the AFM boot or anything like that, so still have work to do, but I'm confident at least putting the cooling hoses and the exhaust on it now. Guess I'll move it over to the lift. I think that's pretty much everything out of the way. Trying not to run over all the new exhaust hardware in the process. Try not to hit the Fiat or the garbage. You really have to keep it on the throttle. Dramatic. All right, time to repair this ANSA Sport that I got for free. I'm gonna clean up this little area, weld it up, and I'll be able to attach it to my factory front section way over there. Hopefully everything goes well. I don't think I've ever installed an exhaust on an E30 with actual like working OE hardware before, but everything fits together really nicely, which should be no surprise. Got all new hardware, all new gaskets, everything. So time to stab the cat back in and hopefully everything fits. Awesome possum. Looks good. I do like the polished chrome ANSA tips. Hardware all fit just fine. Just have to button up the center section. And then I think the rest of everything is topside. And all good. I've always kind of dug the look of the diagonal twin pipes on the 325i's. I guess we'll see what it sounds like with an exhaust. Oh, it'll almost idle. Well, I'm not sure if that's AFM, vacuum leak, or if that's just the fact that I'm running a 2.7 with the standard 15-pound injectors. But either way, I haven't wired up the reverse light shit when I was down there, so it should be a nice easy plug-in. Get rid of this super cool SMG knob. I'm gonna briefly take the SL and go get some hot dog buns because I'm out for my brats today. And also I need to make sure that the soft top is still working after we paid to have it repaired last year. And at some point this year, I'm gonna have to pull the dash probably completely out of this car because we've got a short circuit somewhere in the HVAC system. This car has not been started since you last saw it running. This is a sight for sore eyes. We've had this car since 2003, and the top always worked well up until about, I think it was a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. Wow, 2+, when my dad totaled this thing before I rebuilt it. And the mice that camped in it at the body shop, unfortunately, I guess you put the tabs up here, made a home in it, and I think crossed a bunch of wires. There were a good deal of messed up wires in the engine bay, which I fixed up. And then, oh, there's new plates too. I guess I'll put those on for them. I'm getting sidetracked. Anyway, there was mouse damage for the engine control system. It was only running on 6 cylinders with the crushed throttle body. So I fixed all that, but there's definitely issue in the dash as well, because every time I put in an HVAC panel, it blows up. The magic smoke comes out. So I have one more good one I've purchased, and I'd like to not destroy it, but it is a perfect convertible day. Well, the SL's all good. Actually, I took some Lexol and wiped down all the leather, and I've never seen leather drink conditioner like that. So I spent like a half hour just rubbing down the leather. E30 is back over on the left side. It does have an exhaust on it. It's running better and better every time I start it, but this AFM and airbox upper half are kind of suspect. And again, no clamps. That alone can cause a lot of issues, especially because it just doesn't like to idle right now. I also don't know the state of that valve. It could be jammed. I'm really excited about this car. I love the M3. Not getting rid of it, don't worry. But this is more fun because I don't really care as much about it. Although this is probably, what, like a $20,000 car now? It's ridiculous in its own right. But, yeah, plan next time I'm down here, rip the airbox stuff back off, put all the coolant pipes in. I have the crossover there, but I think I want to clean it up just a little bit because it's kind of meh. Put all this effort into making this part of the car look good, so I may as well continue it. I still have to plug the actual harness thing into the firewall. And just do a bunch of cleaning. God, a lot of cleaning. But we're getting closer. For a car that I haven't really touched in 3 or 4 months, I feel a little bit bad about it, but the weather, winter weather, I don't like working on stuff, and that actually makes me relish projects like this a little bit more in the spring. So I think you'll find fewer people up in my neck of the woods that have project cars that don't move at all for more than a year, because springtime is always that motivation to actually get going again. Whereas if you have a project car like this in the south, you're like, yeah, I'll get to it next week. Yeah, I'll get to it next week, and you never do. So S55 service next. Got a lot of parts over there for that. Needs a B service and some other stuff. So transmission service, 16 spark plugs because the M113s have 2 per cylinder. What else? Fuel filter, air filters, both cabin and engine. I needed more stuff too. I have it written down somewhere, but of course leave it to Mercedes to not actually tell you what a B service really is. Probably also going to do brake fluid and driveline fluid services just because I don't think that's ever been touched on there. So Either way, if you know anyone looking for a clean-ish 04 S55 AMG, it is a supercharged one, let me know. We're probably going to be asking about 10 grand for it once it's all detailed up and serviced. So, good car, just we need to make room for a Phantom.